ai ai mai ai 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 hiu na le ke o nga ta ko yo ma ga lo pe no na me lo pe ho lang mai mai ai 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 ta có yo mai em này cái mà ta có yo nang nang ai mà ta có yo ma cái lo phèn nó nam mới lo phải hiểu lòng mai mai ai 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 nè leo vang lệ ta coi yung nang nang ai mà ai leo cái nhau ngọc bạc cái cờ nặc vô lê vô hao ghê mà ya sắc ta nè mà ai 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 poi nang na gen ma ko na ke te gen na pat ka wen yo la ga ma na ya mai la ne mai ai 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 when yo la con ana que se con en ma ai 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 pang mai hiu ga ma ke o nga ma na ka me ka na pa ke na lo pe pang mai ai 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 ya 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 pe ta ke me ka sa lo ngen na mai ma na ka me ke na pa ke na pa nga pang mai ya 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 pang mai ya go le la lok trong ai ya ke ngo go no go le la lok trong a pang mai ya 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 ne yo te no ne yo mana yang ne ga mai ya ke ngo go no go le la lok trong a pang mai ya 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 na le na ka na pa na lang mai ya na yo le yo pe na te hung a ga pang mai ya 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 no ga leng me ta pe hung a so na man na ya na yo le yo pe na te hung a ga pang mai ya 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 ai 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 ka to con le man ai ma ko le to ko huk te pak lo ke pang mai ai 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 ai
When were you born?
I don't remember when I was born, but my mother here told me that these pictures were taken soon after I was born. My mother is here, and I'm over here.
This is you?
Yes, I think this picture was taken in 1910. People say I was born in 1910. But I remember when Solomon made a house. I remember that too clearly. I can't remember and be born at the same time.
When was this picture taken?
My mother here told me that this picture was taken in the spring, just after I was born.
It says that it's taken in 1903.
Well, when I told my son Billy that I was born the same year this picture was taken, he said that it was in April 1903. I didn't know anything about this until Billy read it and told me. So now I think that I was born in 1903 because I was behind my mother's back when this other picture was taken.
Could you tell me how you started sewing when you were a child?
Yes, I can tell you a little bit. I used to try to sew with my grandmother's younger sister, who adopted me. I used to try to sew because they told me that I had to learn to do things myself because I wasn't going to have any more younger brothers or sisters, and they wanted me to be really good. This lady here was very strict. She was very strict with me. When I was maybe 10 years old, I used to try to make mitts for myself. I used to make things that I couldn't get on, but I would wear them anyway, even though my hands were sticking way out of the sleeves. Now I realize it was all right. I used to cry trying to get them finished right. I guess they tried very hard to teach me so that I would sew well in the future. By the time I got married, I was sewing very well, so they weren't worried about me. Things that I made, I wore, but they didn't fit right. I tell people it doesn't matter if your sewing is no good when you are just learning, because in the end, you will be sewing very well. Even today, I still make mistakes, but if people try like I did, they will learn.
Do you think that maybe young girls are not trying hard enough today?
We try to teach them how to sew, but it is useless to try to help them now. They don't want to be helped, and they don't want to do anything. In the future, they may try to work with it, but as soon as they try to sew or start working with skins, like these caribou skins, they start saying that they have sore hands and their palms hurt because they just don't know how to work with skins. I think that the palms of their hands are really too soft now. By the time we were 15 years old, we knew how to make our own mitts because we had to. Our parents or our grandparents taught us how to sew. That's how I learned. I followed and watched my grandparents work.
When you were a young girl, did you work a lot with caribou skins?
Yes, we used to work a lot with skins. We did the harder work on them because we were stronger, younger. We used to have to do the difficult things. When the skin had been dried, we had to work with it. Our grandparents would sleep with the fur of the caribou out. We kids wouldn't do this, but we would carry the white part of the fur, the bottom of the fur, against our backs. There are 3 basic stages of preparing skins for making clothes. First, laying the caribou skin out to dry. Then you scrape it with the grain, and finally across the grain.
Did you do this when you were young?
They would start letting us work when we were about 10 years old. I would do a lot of work myself. Now I really can't do any more, although I still try.
How old were you when you started making caribou boots and parkas?
I got married when I learned how to make comics. I was asked to get married 3 times, but my grandparents really loved me, and they told me they couldn't give me away because I couldn't make anything yet. Also, I was an only child. After I learned how to make mitts, I learned how to make caribou boots. I had made my cousin a pair of caribou pants, and so I told my new husband I knew how to make them. I did the measurements and everything myself, and he tried to put them on, but he couldn't get them on at all. I got really angry with him and told him to force them on. So he pulled them on and he said, "What am I going to do now?" I said, "Well, crouch down," and he did, and they ripped right up. But even after that, I kept trying. I used to make that kind of mistake, but everyone has the experience of not doing well at first, and then learning how to sew properly in the end. I tell young girls that it's a lot of fun to watch yourself actually learning to sew, step by step. It is a lot of fun learning how to sew.
Were there a lot of caribou taken at the time of year when they were good for clothing?
We had shirts and parkas. We had a lot of pants sewed for us. We had boots and everything. Every year we would get new clothing like that. When I was younger, I had to stay with older people, and so I had to make my clothes last for 2 years. But after I got married, our children and I would get brand new skins every year for clothing.
Were a lot of caribou killed for this?
We always wanted a good supply of skins. All the women were proud and wanted to wear the best of everything, especially when we were going to see other people.
Is there more hunting today than before?
Well, nowadays, we never get enough caribou. Billy is working right now, and he only hunts on the weekend. He shoots just enough caribou to get himself clothing and a parka for me. We hardly catch caribou now. He has a parka, and I have a parka, and his wife has caribou clothing. But aside from that, we never get enough skins for more clothing.
Will the parka that you make last for a long time?
Maybe 2 or 3 years. Margot's parka is about 2 or 3 years old. It's really nice.
Is it going to last a long time still?
If it was worn like we used to wear clothing before, it would last just 1 year. Skins that are more than a year old are not as warm as new ones.
In the past, was the whole caribou used?
In fact, they used to save all the little scraps of skin to make the soles of the caribou skin boots.
Do you think more caribou is killed today than before?
I don't know because I never go hunting. It has just been recently that there have been caribou along the shorelines along the coast. I think that ever since they started to mine and explore inland, the caribou have started to come along the coast. Before that, we used to have to walk way inland to hunt them. But just recently I have noticed that they are along the shorelines.
Now that they are using snowmobiles, do you think that they are catching fewer caribou than before?
Maybe the caribou are running too much now. When I eat caribou that has been running for any length of time, it is not so good. This is how we used to hunt before. The men would look through the binoculars and spot the caribou. Then they tied their dogs and left them behind so they wouldn't scare the animals. Then we would stalk the caribou, walking into the wind, killing what we could. Caribou meat is really good when the animals haven't been running too much.
They make the caribou run for too long nowadays when they hunt them?
I think so. I can't eat caribou that has been running. I can tell the difference because I have lived with them for so long. Caribou that hasn't been running has really good tasting meat.
How long did it used to take to make parkas and other caribou clothing?
We had to work and make the skin soft before we started sewing the caribou.
Did you use designs?
Some of them had design and decorations, but some of them didn't.
But this one does.
Yes, it has. It's decorated with fur from the stomach on the caribou, which is white. I put them on for decoration. These are not big pieces. They take forever to sew at normal speed. But if you are in a hurry, they do not take very long to sew.
How long does it take you to make the parka?
It normally takes 2 days to tan the caribou, although it sometimes takes as little as a day.
Then how long will it take to sew it and to finish it?
Well, before I used to take a very short time to sew caribou clothing. Sometimes I almost finished a parka in a day, and then the next day I would finish it. When I was younger, I used to sew a lot faster, but now it seems to take forever. Sometimes it takes a whole day just to sew a pair of kamiks.
Were you a better sewer before?
Yes, I used to be very good. I used to start sewing in the morning and finish at night.
Just by hand?
Always by hand.
How did you soften the skins before? By scraping them or in some other way?
We would sleep with it, first with the first side out, and when we woke up, we would wait for the skin to get cold again, and then we would scrape it with a dull-headed scraper. After that, we would scrape the skin again, this time with a sharp-edged scraper. We still do this today, but nowadays we hardly have any skins.
How long will a parka be used for?
For a long time.
How long did one parka last before for one person?
They used to be used constantly, so we would have to make parkas every year. By the end of the year, after heavy use, there would be no more fur on the front of the coat. So every spring we would have to make new ones for everyone.
How much caribou would be used for one parka?
You would use 2 caribou skins for the outer coat, and if you had a shirt inside, you would use another 2. So you would catch about 4 caribou to do the inner coat and the outer coat.
What about the boots?
They would be made with the scraps and the leftovers of the parka and the shirt.
So they would have to catch 4 or 5 caribou for one person's clothing?
Yes, it would take 5 caribou for the coat, mitts, pants, and boots.
We didn't have any material like nylon or duffel for clothing, although pants and other clothing items were sometimes made with sealskin. So how much caribou did you have to catch for clothing for one family? As far back as I can remember, Inuk were starting to camp and going inland for hunting. They wouldn't catch just for themselves, but they would try to take caribou for the whole camp and for other people that were in need of caribou. In the summertime, when the skins were good for clothing, someone would go inland and hunt caribou, and in the fall, when ice started to form, the hunter would come back with the caribou, and there would usually be plenty. Although sometimes there wouldn't be enough caribou for all the people who needed them. What about today? How much caribou do you have to catch to last a year? I never thought about it that way before. I haven't ever totally concentrated on catching caribou. It's just now that I'm in Wolf Cove, I notice a lot of caribou being caught. In other places, I didn't seem to think of caribou very much. I used to try to feed my dogs with sea mammals, which were more fattening and more enjoyable for them. But here in Will Cove, caribou seems to be the only source of food for us today. Does it seem that they are using only half of the amount of caribou that they would use before?
We seem to be eating only half the caribou, but before we used to eat the whole animal.
So it seems half of it is wasted.
Yes, we were eating only half the caribou. I think people waste a lot of it and do not use a lot of the edible part of the caribou that we used to eat before.
Sometimes if people have caribou on the floor inside the house, they never seem to finish everything. If they have caribou in the house that is not frozen, they just end up throwing it away. It would still be good to eat. The earlier times it was all eaten, but today people just throw it out. It was hard living. We didn't have a rifle or anything, and we never ever wasted caribou until I started living over here. Now I understand caribou is being left, and people just take the skin, and that's about all. Sometimes we also see caribou that has just been left after it has been shot. What do you think of this? I also hear things like that. I hear that sometimes caribou are left totally, without even being skinned. I really don't like this. As far back as I can remember, we were always very poor. And I remember then, I never used to hear of people leaving anything at all. It's only been recently that I started to hear about caribou being left. And before, you never heard anybody even say this? I remember where I was. We never used to leave caribou at all. Now they probably do. But throughout my youth, they never left anything. It was all used, was it? Yes, it was all used. In fact, if they didn't have any bags to carry things, they would take some of the intestines and enlarge them.
Then they would take the bones and crush them very fine, and they would cook this. When they cooked it, all the fat would come out, and they would use the fat for light. The bones that had been finely crushed would be used for dog food. So the whole caribou would be used. It's not like that anymore.
Did they also make funnels out of antlers? The hardest part of the antlers close to the head would be used for harpoon heads.
Sometimes also for fish spears.
Were the bones also used for toys and other things like that? When I was a kid, we used the antlers and we would stand them up and then we would hit them down. Other times we would play with them as if they were caribou. We hear that the Kamanakyo herd is decreasing. What do you think of this? I myself think that the caribou are decreasing, and I think the herd is moving. There are a lot of us using caribou for food, so I think the herds are moving. Either that or they're decreasing. If the Inuit should find out that the herd is decreasing, what should they do to manage and control them? I think that if the Inuit calm down a little and started saying to themselves that they should catch only what they need, I think then the shooting of the caribou would be a lot less. If that happened, the decrease would be a lot slower.